From WBBZ-TV Sports, it's time to beat the champ. Now, here are your hosts, Paul Peck and Sue Novoitsky.
Well, hi, bowling fans, and welcome to a month of fun and craziness, also known as our annual stop to MALLWITZ'S Island Lanes in Grand Island. We always have some of our most exciting and entertaining bowling when we come here.
I know they make our job much easier here. The spectators do all the entertaining for us, so we don't have to work as hard. But this is going to be an interesting month because we have transitioned from 2 months of 2 sports shots, very difficult scoring conditions. Back to a house shot here, probably going to see a few more strikes.
Yeah, well, we like living large when we're here in Grand Island, and Josh Large will get the chance to have some bigger scores because he got himself through that challenge in Niagara Falls, and he'll be our first bowler today.
Right, and he's facing a few of the bowlers that we normally see in our 4th show. A couple bowlers at Bowl League here. They're going to be very comfortable. This is their house, and make it a little difficult on our incoming champ.
Yeah, Andy Moran, Michael Kemp, and Mike Johnson are the 3 challengers to Josh Large today. Every time we come here, I always ask if you are prepared for the unexpected.
Yeah, oh my gosh, I'm always prepared, and it's always such a fun time here. We love coming to MALLWITZ. It's always exciting.
We never know what's going to happen when we come to Grand Island. Well, we're all about to find out at the same time. So let's get rolling. So here we go with our first match from Grand Island. It's Josh Large, our returning champion, against Andy Moran, a regular here at MALLWITZ'S Island Lanes and a regular on our show. I think he's been on almost every show that we have had here in Grand Island. This is his 4th appearance on Beat the Champ. First time sporting the beard. I like,
know.
Andy, you look different.
He does.
He goes, yeah, I look different than the last time you saw me, which was a couple of months ago.
Truthfully, I feel like he's grown up in front of our eyes now that we're in our 5th year. And he was here on the first show and just looked like a baby to me, and now he's like grown into a man, like right before our eyes. A lot of oil out there.
Right.
Even though this is a house shot, which we alluded to in the opening, because the lanes have to hold up all day, you're going to see it to be a little heavier oil here in the beginning, and the guys are going to have to start off to the right. And he got that ball. It's using kind of a shiny ball, so that's not going to grip the lane right away. So saw him come up a little light there.
Yeah, we'll talk a little more about the oil pattern as it relates to what we saw last month, of which we talked a lot about that. And it literally is opposite ends of the oil spectrum here, so to speak. So, I mean, last month when winners were barely breaking 200, if not even lower to win matches, I get the sense you're telling me we'll be back to the 225, 250 ranges, right?
Well,
maybe.
I've seen house shots break down funny too. It all depends on where the guys are playing, or where the players are playing, and what equipment they're using. Because now you're seeing, like I mentioned, Andy's using kind of a shinier ball. You've got Josh using a duller ball, so Josh's ball is going to suck up the oil somewhat. It's going to absorb the oil. So I've seen them mess up house shots, but right now you're looking at a lot of oil to the left of them, dry to the right, and your typical, if you miss a little bit right, it's going to hook. If you miss a little bit in, it's going to slide.
Well, it didn't seem to bother Josh Large. He seems to be enjoying this quote-unquote easier oil pattern because he opens with a pair of strikes. So now Andy Moran, who spared first frame, will come back at us. 1-3 is the overall record for Andy in his previous 4 appearances on the show. Last time we saw him was the last time we were here, which was in October of last year. And there's a strike for Andy. And that appearance in October was memorable because Andy beat Chuck Jagosinski, and anytime anybody beats Chuck Jagosinski, that is significant in itself. And then he wound up losing to another Grand Island regular, Jeff Crickham, who wound up advancing to, I believe, was it Rapids? Or no, that was Bradford.
No, it was Bradford. He had a long drive and
Yep.
Didn't fare too well in his first match, so it was a very long trip for him from Grand Island to Bradford.
So Andy's got a little bit of that momentum from the last time we were here. Again, normally we're here, once a year, but it's just the quirk of the schedule that we're here for, twice in 4 months.
Oh, what a great shot that was. So,
like I said, normally we need a year to recover from our appearances here at Island Lanes. We do not have that benefit this time.
You know what?
You're not
I
commenting,
was
are
actually
you?
happy that I was happy that we were coming back here this soon. And we're all in mid-season form here, so we're talking about, you know, February in the bowling world. You've been bowling now for 3-4 months. Your game is as good as it's going to get. You're as sharp as you're going to get. Tournament season is coming up, so we're going to start talking about the national tournament. The state tournament will be coming up in you know, about 7-8 weeks. So everybody's buying new equipment, very sharp on their games. So this is where we should see our very best bowling.
This is the 3rd month in a row that Josh Large has been on our show, 2 months in a row at the Rapids Bowling Center and then here in Grand Island. So talk about being on his game. 4th appearance on our show for Josh Large, 3 wins and 2 losses in the previous appearances. And remember, he was our winner of our last match at Rapids 2 weeks ago, and that gets him here to Grand Island. And you get a look at the Castellone Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram scoreboard. And Janelle's got some of the early scores down there as the guys are putting some strikes on the board here.
Yeah, because we got to be at Rapids 2 months in a row, the last show of the year and first show of the year. They wanted there to be, you know, some real competition and some, you know, level down scores, you know, and the bowlers like that. And
I loved it. I thought it gave us a lot more to talk about. It gave us a lot more intricacies of the sport to discuss. And hey, we all love the big scores in any sport that we follow. But I thought it was incredibly interesting and challenging for the guys to know that a 190 was going to be enough.
Right, and surprisingly enough, I did get a lot of input from, you know, from the community watching, and feel like bad for the bowler that, oh, you know, it was so tough. But the bowler actually likes that. They actually appreciate both. They like coming out here and having a, you know, a little bit of a nicer shot and strike. Everybody likes to strike a lot, but they also like that challenge too. And you gotta remember, they're on the same condition. You know, as long as you're on the same playing field,
right,
then, you know, sometimes 190 is a great score.
Sure.
Sometimes 250 is a great score. But everybody's on the same condition, so you know the fairness is there.
You know, and again, these are the best bowlers in Western New York. That's why you see a lot of the same names on this show. That's why we try to emphasize the fact that this person's been on 4 times, this person's been on 5 times.
Great
Mike,
shot.
you know, Mike Zarcone's been on 37 times. I mean, there's a reason, you know, that those guys are as good as they are, and it's nice to push them in some different directions as well.
This feels like a good time to take a short break. We'll be right back with more action on Beat the Champ.
Instant replay on Beat the Champ is brought to you by Transit Lanes and Keglers. Join us for bowling, food, and drinks.
Welcome back to Beat the Champ. Let's get back to the action here on WBBZ-TV.
Oh, big wobble on the 10, but it will not go down for Andy Moran, ending his run of 5 consecutive strikes. Interesting sort of 2-phased approach for Andy Moran.
Yeah, it's not as usual that you'll have that break in your approach, but again, you can do anything you want as long as you do it every single time the same way, and he does. So it's he builds his momentum. You know, he takes a couple steps. It's almost like a 3-step approach, really, because he almost stops and starts.
There you go.
all
Watch
over.
it. You can watch it yourself if you hadn't been paying attention.
Nice and low in the beginning, though, and it's important to stay low. So
What's the benefit of the way he does that, other than it works for him?
I don't think there's necessarily a benefit to it, and you know, in all honesty, it would be complicated for someone to try to learn that. That's obviously just. He was, I believe, if I remember the story correctly, he was a little bit late to the game. Like they kind of coached him here through, you know, becoming friends with Mike and all of that. And that's just how he developed. And again, he's consistent about it, so it doesn't hurt him. But it would be a tough thing to learn.
Josh Large is 21 years old. He's from Tonawanda. CNC machinist is the occupation for Josh. 215 his overall average. Bowls at 3 times a week. Tonawanda, Brad Angelo Lanes, and a couple of other places around
Fridays
town.
at the Edge.
That's what it said, right? I couldn't read that for a second. As you see the Edge at the moment for Andy Moran on the Castellone scoreboard. 2018-19 Team USB Youth Championship, part of the resume for Josh Large, and that's not one he's going to want to put on the resume.
No, he definitely tried to.
What do we got? 2.5.10 here?
No.
No, 4. We got 4.8.10, don't we?
4.8.10, yeah.
Hit the 2 on the left and try to fly it off to the 10.
Yeah, I actually think that separation could be an advantage. Not quite.
Yeah, hit
close.
it 2 straight on. So that's an open in the 8th for Andy Moran.
Yeah.
Or I'm sorry, not Andy Moran, for Josh Large.
That hurts. He was
That's
on
a
his
huge
way.
opener for Andy Moran.
He's taking a chance there because he wasn't carrying. That's the hard part. When you're hitting the pocket, ringing the 10, your opponent's striking. Do you move? Do you make a change? Because you're hitting the pocket, it's so hard to give it up. In this case, I think he tried to do something to create a strike, and it worked against him.
And back to striking for Andy Moran. So that's 6 of the last 7 frames have been a strike. Tonawanda City All Events Champion 2017, Tonawanda Doubles Champ 2017 and 2016, and he had a high set of 846 in the Tonawanda USBC in 2019.
That is a big number, 846.
Yeah, how about that? 8 career 800s for Andy and 12 career 300 games for him.
Does it say how long? Oh, it says he's been bowling 23 years. Okay, so he's been bowling for a while.
Later, you know, not all that much of a later start.
No, no.
7 of 8 for Andy Moran. We talk about this a lot. Maybe we probably talk about it here as much as any place because we have this contingent of MALLWITZ Island Lanes bowlers, and always seems like half of them always make our show because they know this place. They're used to it. They bowl here a lot.
And I think, you know, just like I said, a product of like kind of knowing what kind of ball you need to create your highest strike potential, and that's kind of the advantage that they have. Plus, how can you not feel comfortable here? I mean, this is like their home away from home.
That's right.
But for Josh here, the best he can shoot is 194, even if he strikes out here. And you know, Andy pretty much needs to just keep it on the lane in the 10th. So I guess he's going to have to throw them all just to force Andy to not make a huge mistake.
10th frame for Josh Large. First one's a strike. Needs to keep doing that. Yeah, that open in the 8th frame was probably, if Josh doesn't win this match, will be the pivotal moment, and that's what we'll ask him about if, in fact, he doesn't come from behind to win here.
It would take a huge error on Andy's behalf to lose this, but
second ball of the 10th frame is another strike. We mentioned Josh's 3rd month in a row, so he is in a good groove, bowling at different houses. Always a good chance that he's going to make the ride down there to Salamanca, that we might see him next month as well, too.
Big smile on Andy's face. He knows he just needs to keep it on the lane here. Nice finish, though.
Yeah, Josh punches out with 4 straight strikes to put up a 224, but it likely isn't going to be enough. And we'll see. As Sue pointed out, Andy just needs to keep it on the lanes here in the 10th frame.
And that will be enough.
That's enough. So Andy Moran is going to get the victory here at his home house of MALLWITZ'S Island Lanes. A victory over Josh Large to advance him on to our next match against Michael Kemp. We'll check in with Josh, get his feel on what the lanes are doing early on here, and get you ready for match 2. When Sue and I return, we are off and rolling in Grand Island. It's Beat the Champ. We're back right after this. 248 to 224, Andy Moran defeats Josh Lard. So everybody wants to know, after what happened last month at Rapids with the challenges of the oil patterns, how did this thing work out so far for you here today?
It worked out pretty good, but my carry wasn't that great. He was carrying way better, threw the ball great. It's a great match.
You've been on the show 3 months in a row. Always a good chance we might see you again next month as well. What is it about the way you're bowling right now that's been so successful?
I've been more consistent over the past few months, I think, making more spares.
Any reason why?
More practice.
There you go. That's what you love to hear, isn't it?
Gotta love to hear more practice. Josh, I remember watching you a kid bowling in all the kid tournaments here, the youth tournaments, and you've always been solid here. You bowled solid today. I actually wish you would have bowled qualifying here, because I think today might have turned out a little different, but you bowled great. It was a solid match, and congrats, man.
Thanks for having us.
Oh, thank you. Here's some extra cash in your pocket to make it easier.
Thank you.
Hey, Josh, thanks for being a big part of the show the last couple of months. We might see him again next month in Salamanca, but we know we're going to see Andy Moran and Michael Kemp in his match number 2. It's coming up next. It's match number 2 here at Island Lanes. Andy Moran will try to keep the good spirits going here. His opponent, Michael Kemp, for our second match. And once again, as we saw in that first one, we can expect a little bit higher scores and maybe a little more flexibility from the lanes, where there's a little more margin for error from the guys. And Andy Moran got to keep banking on the fact that he knows this place as well as anybody.
Yeah, he knows what his next move will be. There's no doubt about that.
Now, what'll be interesting is, should Andy win this match, then it's he'll go up against another house bowler in Mike Johnson, and now that advantage will not be quite as much.
I hear you, and we talked about last time we were here that Mike Johnson was mysteriously missing from the qualifying because he makes it here almost every time.
Yeah,
so,
he almost does.
He took that to heart and
I think
made sure
did,
he
yes.
he made the show.
Yeah, we'll talk more about Mike coming up, but here's Michael Kemp. And that's a good-looking strike to get things started. 12th appearance on our show for Michael Kemp. 9 wins and 9 losses is the overall record, and it's been a little while. We haven't seen Michael in over a year. Rapids Bowling Center in 2018, towards the end of 2018, was the last time that we saw Michael on our show, but he's had a nice little run of some winning streaks here on Beat the Champ. So he's a familiar name to all you Beat the Champers out there. Oh boy, that blew through all the pins except the one staring him right down the middle.
Yep, one of the true chaps in bowling is the 8-pin. It can't really do anything different, just a deflection thing. The ball just doesn't take it out like it's supposed to, but it's a great shot and it's very painful, especially when you need to strike. That's the thing about these conditions, is as nice as they are and as much as you get to the pocket, you find yourself behind if you don't keep up in the striking pattern.
Yeah, well, and again, just doing some quick math, what did we say? Andy Moran had 8 strikes in that first match, his victory over Josh Lard. So Mike Kemp's got to look at that and know, I probably need 7 or 8, just to keep with this guy.
Yep, absolutely. Need a lot of strikes to shoot 240. Oops, right on.
2 for 2 so far for Andy Moran. He's never going to shave after bowling like this, huh? Right? You're never going to shave anymore if you keep bowling like this? Yeah, see?
Are you saying he's superstitious?
I'm saying I've met an athlete at any sport at any level in my entire life that wasn't superstitious. Tell me your husband isn't, as a hockey player, isn't the craziest of all superstitious athletes.
What, because they put their skate on the same way and the same foot?
Exactly.
Oh.
See, we talk about luck and superstition, and then he gets one of those to go.
How sweet.
I think Michael Kemp's regretting shaving this morning now, right?
Well, I have to feel like he knows these lanes a little bit. He did post up a 300 in
That's right.
qualifying. That should give him a little boost of confidence.
So the interesting thing about Mike's history on this show, I mentioned he's won 9 matches. Those came in 2 winning streaks, a 5-match winning streak and a 4-match winning streak, which is really interesting that whenever he gets on the show, he gets hot and he knocks off a bunch of wins in a row. And then the other times it's kind of been one and done.
Well, I remember in the beginning, he made a bunch of shows in the beginning, and just no matter what he shot, I think if we were to go back, I mean way back, we're talking this young man was shooting 230s, and no matter what he shot, he lost. So he would be posting up big scores, and they just weren't enough. And I remember talking to him in an interview saying, "You have a bullseye on your back," and you know, and I think that's where. And then all of a sudden it turned around, and all of a sudden he was posting these little winning streaks. So got a little confidence, and got broken in the hard way on Beat the Champ with a lot of losses.
Yep, won 5 in a row at Brad Angelo Lanes back in 2017. And you saw in that last one, classic ring 10 again. Starting to see a lot of ring 10s here. All right, so when I say that, we're starting to see a lot of ring 10s. You alluded to this a little earlier in the first match, but why?
Because it's all angle of entry into the pocket. And again, we'll see the players hit the pocket on a regular basis. They're very rarely going to miss the pocket unless they try to do something drastic in order to carry. But it's a matter of angle, and Michael, between his bowling ball and the way he throws it, he just doesn't have the angle to carry at this point.
Now that time, speaking of pocket, Andy missed it.
Well, here's what happened with Andy. Andy went a little high on lane 7, so his ball is rolling a little bit sooner, and that was what was creating the good carry for him. But transition is going to happen no matter what kind of shot you have. So now it's starting to break down a little bit, and it's going to break down early, which is going to make his ball start up a little early. He saw it on lane 7, caught the break, caught the strike, but did not make a move on lane 8, and now it went even higher. So he's going to have to make a move now, and every time you make a move with all this oil in the middle, you run the risk of starting to leave 10 pins. Because he was in the perfect sweet spot, but he's going to get pushed out of it just by the natural decrease of oil. This looks like a good time to take a break. We'll be back with more Beat the Champ right after this. Welcome back to Beat the Champ.
And once again, getting a little left of the pocket, but it didn't matter. Back-to-back late falls get both guys strikes.
Must be the beard.
It must be the beard.
Because that was a break right there.
That was a break.
And
so both guys got real breaks on their last 2 in the 6th frame.
Well, that was a little bit more of a break, and on top of it, it was to make a double, and he was already up 22, so that puts him up another 10.
Because he missed the pocket a little more than Michael did.
Yeah, it was a little high.
Yeah.
Right up the second arrow, right up toward 10.
Yep, I keep watching that, you can see it down the lane, that second long line towards the end of the lane, and right now Andy's ball literally cuts right down the middle of it almost every time.
Yep, it's been very,
and
very
that is
accurate.
lined up with the second arrow towards the approach. So
Which we
Michael's,
like to call the track. That's the track.
Very good, thank you. Michael's got some work to do here. And that one got a little right of that. If you're watching that line like I was, he got a little right of it, and then when it broke a little more to the left.
And that's where the dry is. So, like I said, Andy's playing right on that line of oil to dry. And he's actually trying to pull a little bit into the oil. Because there's a lot of oil to the left of him. He just got that, and Michael just got that into the dry a little bit.
8th frame now for Michael Kemp.
Down 30.
35 years old, from Lancaster, analyst at M&T Bank. Bowls regularly at Transit Lanes each week. 10 career 300s, including the one in qualifying here, and 7 800 series with a high of 849 for Michael Kemp.
Yeah, this is one of those things where, you know, the bowlers end up making the show based on how they qualify. So Andy was our high qualifier after the top 24, so he's our first player. Obviously, he'll have the most potential to bowl the longest here because he bowled the best here. And Michael was obviously second, but it's also how much of these lanes been bowled on and where is it in transition while you're qualifying. So this is early on. There's a lot, the oil's pretty heavy still. It might not favor Michael as much as it did in qualifying. So
Sure.
if he hit the show a little later in the day, it might be a little bit closer.
If he's in the middle of our second show as the 5th qualifier, it may play more to his
There's
advantage.
a lot of nuances to this.
Yeah, and that's what we try to do our best to bring to you, and I find incredibly interesting is sometimes, you know, it's the luck of the draw, it's the luck of when you bowl, it's the luck of who you're bowling against. You know, all those things come into play, and all those things have to be adjusted for as a bowler in order to get the maximum out of your talents.
Right. And you have to be prepared, and that's where I think maybe the bowlers that bowl here all the time have a little bit of an advantage, a tiny advantage, because they know the nuances of the lanes and how they're going to break down, because they, through their course of league bowling, they see it every single week. They start in one spot and inevitably finish in another spot and know what they have to do. So that plan is already in their mind, where someone that doesn't bowl here on a regular basis kind of has to think it through and kind of predict what's going to happen and be prepared for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it doesn't always prove to be a huge advantage, but I think we've seen through the course of this show that being a particular house bowler or comfortable or familiar with a particular house does come into play.
Right.
You know, sometimes when you're bowling great bowlers who can bowl anywhere, it doesn't matter.
Well, the last 2 months at Rapids, that didn't play true because they changed the shot on them.
Right. So that's a shot that even if you bowled at Rapids 7 days a week, you wouldn't have been very familiar with.
Exactly.
Lots of variables. There may be as many variables in this sport as any sport.
Right. And people don't realize it because you can't see your obstacles, because you can't. We had talked when they use the blue.
Yeah. If you watch the PBA Tour television events.
Right. But to look right at this, every lane looks the same.
Good strike. One of the best ones of the day for Michael Kemp. Comes in the 9th frame.
It's funny how, though, that swing gets a little looser when it doesn't matter. I mean, he has pretty much no chance of winning this match, because I'm pretty sure that Andy's not going to throw 4 gutter balls in a row.
Yeah, you think so?
So then all of a sudden the swing gets a little bit looser, and all of a
Malwitz
sudden...
wouldn't let him back in the building if that happened.
Yeah. He wouldn't want to come back in the building if that
well,
happened.
you're right. It wouldn't be Mike he'd have to deal with. It'd have to be the rest of the Malwitz Mafia. 2 in a row for Mike Kemp. And to finish out strong here.
And we saw that in the last match with Josh when he was pretty much mathematically out of it. All of a sudden the strikes, those pins all started to fall down. So
yeah, a little relaxation that comes into play, right?
Yep, swing gets a little bit looser. And, you know, I'm not 100% convinced they're not trying anything, because I don't know what's in their mind, but it's pretty coincidental that all of a sudden the pins fall a little easier when it doesn't matter anymore.
Well, big ring 10 on that one will not allow Michael to end on strikes.
No, and he needed them all just to make Andy not make a mistake. So right now, Andy's got this match.
All right, so it's going to be another win, 2 in a row for Andy Moran, with victory over Michael Kemp and a chance to sweep the week, as Andy Moran's going to battle one of his buddies and one of the MALLWITZ'S regulars. We'll get you ready for that match, and we'll check in with Michael Kemp when Sue and I return to Grand Island. It's Beat the Champ. We're back after this. 234 to 205 is the win for Andy Moran, his second in a row over Michael Kemp. You bowled well, but you made spares when the other guy made strikes. Does that kind of wrap this one up?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I just didn't strike enough. He did, and that's the ball game.
What'd you learn about the lane conditions? What's going to be the challenge for the guys moving forward?
They'll probably break down a little. They'll be hooking a little bit more eventually, and it's just about carrying that 10 pin.
So.
Yeah, well, you're not the first guy to have experienced that. What'd you do to the 10 pins this week, Mallwitz?
Well, he didn't have a problem carrying the 10 pin in qualifying. I want to say congrats on your 300 in qualifying. That was great.
Thanks.
But I mean, the 10 is always tough to get out. No matter what conditions you're bowling on, you got to find the right roll and the right entry angle into the pocket to be able to carry the 10 pin. Sometimes it's tougher than others, But great job, great bowling all week, and good job today. Thanks. Here's some cash.
Okay.
All right. Always good to get Michael on the show. I know we're going to see him again soon. We know coming up immediately soon is a couple of the Mallwitz All-Stars as Andy Moran goes against Mike Johnson. Stick around. That one's going to be a fun one. It is next. Oh, it's a real Grand Island battle here for our final match of week number 1 at Mallwitz'S Island Lanes as Andy Moran will try to get a 3rd win in a row, but he's going to have to go through one of his buddies and one of the Mallwit'S Island Lanes regulars in Mike Johnson. This one should be a good one. If there's two guys that know these lanes better, I don't know if there's any two guys on Grand Island anywhere that know these two lanes better.
There may be one.
Well, maybe it might be you, and yes, we'll hear from Mike Mallwitz here in just a second.
And there's what we were talking about.
Yep. So the look on Andy's face to give you the feel for that's not how he wanted to start it. So yes, it's always fun to welcome in the proprietor here at Mallwitz'S Island Lanes, Mike Mallwitz, and couldn't be a better match for you to be here because you are the expert on these two guys.
Oh, this is great. When I first saw that Andy was first qualifier and Mike Johnson was 3rd, I'm like, I just want to see that match because that's going to be great. This should be a lot of fun.
Now, do they bowl on the same team, or they just both bowl here?
They both bowl here on opposite teams, but Mike Johnson and Andy Moran are on the same team for our 4th show this month. So that's interesting.
Oh, yes, it is.
So whatever happens here, they're going to have to kiss and make up.
Before later on,
yeah. Okay. All right.
So tell us a little bit about how your observations of how Andy's bowled through the first 2 matches here so far.
Andy's actually bowled the way he's been bowling the last couple months. He is so solid lately. It's unbelievable. He's just rolling it very well. It's coming off his hand good. He's really getting the great entry angle into the pocket. I don't know if you've noticed that. Like, just the way his ball rolls through the pins. He's finding the right ball matchup and the right motion to go through the pins.
Well, it's exactly what we were talking about, but we also saw that as the match goes on and transition is going to happen no matter what, it started to break down a little bit for him. And I said one of the things that happens to everyone is when you have to move, sometimes your angle to the pocket is definitely going to change, and now all of a sudden you start leaving those 10 pins, or in this case you saw he went a little bit light on his first shot.
Right.
So.
He's going to have to figure that out, but he's bowled here enough. I think he might be able to do that.
Right, and we talk about that too. Is like here you're comfortable, you know what the transitions are going to be. And but the difference is now you've got your opponent coming on, and this is the only condition they've seen. So you're in the middle of changing, and they're just starting out, seeing what they see.
Exactly.
So it always seems like even though you're the champ, it's almost like a constant game of exactly.
Well, Mike Johnson's already setting a little tone with his strikes in the first 2 frames, and Andy knows he's going to be in for a battle here today in this, our 3rd match of the day. Andy has won the first 2, 248, 224 over Josh Large, 234, 205 over Michael Kemp. So big scores by Andy.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't see Andy warm up, but I was kind of thinking after that last match that he should have tried a different ball in practice.
Exactly.
And I don't think he did, and I'm thinking that might be a problem. I think he should have, because once he moved a little inside, he's going to leave that flat 10,
right,
or the 2 pin that he just left. So I don't know. We'll find out. That's something you can never do against Mike Johnson.
That's tough open there as he misses the single pin spare in frame number 2, and again, it's funny. Andy bowled with incredible confidence in those first 2, and then he misses that one on the first frame, and his look on his face was kind of like set himself a tone here a little bit.
I'm sure we could speak as bowlers. You could have the best shot in the world and be as sure of it. As soon as you're pushed out of it, and you have to start making choices. Now, do I look further down the lane and stay where I was? Do I change balls and try to stay where I am? Do I move in and soften up, right? Now all of a sudden
Yeah.
you've got to make all these choices and you got to make the right one. No doubt on that 10 pin, he's thinking about what created that 10 pin and what he has to do to change it, and totally dismisses the 10 pin and misses it because his mind is on that first
What do I
shot.
do? What am I going to do?
What do
in
I
the
have
next
to do to
frame?
strike?
Yeah.
Yep. Now
Yeah,
all of a
it's
sudden
crazy.
you
You can-
find yourself in a huge hole.
Yeah, you can be so locked in, and then the lanes start to change, and you just instantly become lost. And it's not like you're lost. You're still going to hit the pocket, but finding that right entry angle and the right way for the ball to roll through the pins.
So you go from being invincible to, being back at square one, trying to figure the
Right.
whole thing out.
And like you said, Mike Johnson, this is the only thing he's bowled on all day.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost like a disadvantage, the fact that you
You're
bowled.
transitioning and they're not.
Right.
We've officially, his name has officially been changed, by the way.
Oh, that's awesome. House shoes.
All right, so explain to everybody the origin of the nickname.
I know I said it in the past on Be the Champ, but so we bowl at the sweeper over the summer, the tough shot sweeper, okay? The one week we drive all the way out to the bowling center and Mike forgot his shoe bag. He forgot his bowling shoes. So he went bowling and forgot his bowling shoes. So he goes up to the front desk and he gets a pair of rental shoes, proceeds to make the cut and just run the table. He whacks them. So from that day on, everybody in the bowling community calls him Mike House Shoes Johnson.
Did he leave those shoes or did he take them with him?
He left them.
Oh, that
He's
was
not a
nice.
stealer.
So even though he has never forgotten his shoes ever since then, he will always be House
Oh
Shoes
yeah,
Johnson?
House Shoes Johnson, because he whacked everybody. It was great.
Boy, I tell you what he could be out there barefoot and it wouldn't matter because he's opened with 4
He's tough.
consecutive
He's tough.
strikes.
Mike Johnson's always tough. I was bowling with him in another tournament, like not long after that, and he wasn't bowling all that well. And I'm like, hey Mike, you might want to go to the front desk and grab a pair of rental shoes.
Mike, in talking with Mike before we got started today, I got a sense it's burned him a little bit that he was not here when we were here in October, right? He didn't. I mean, it was unusual that Mike wasn't on our show.
Yeah, unbelievably,
You think
he
that's
didn't-
a little inspiration?
Yeah, he didn't make that cut, and he wasn't having any of that this time.
The action will continue on Beat the Champ in just a minute.
Instant replay on Beat the Champ is brought to you by Transit Lanes and Keglers. Join us for bowling, food, and drinks.
Welcome back to Beat the Champ.
You're
Right.
never out of it.
As you can see on the Castellone scoreboard.
And well, we made the point of last month, the last 2 months, Rapids put out a sports shot, and it was just lower scores. It wasn't any less competition, or here everybody's got 9 or strike, but there's still no guarantee that you're going to strike.
Right.
You still have to work hard at every single shot and think and make adjustments and everything else.
Part of what you said last month, we had the sports shot, and like you said, it was still good competition. I mean, we have the qualifying, then we have the top 24 roll off. We get to the top 9. By the time we get to the top 9, we're talking about good bowlers. So
Great bowlers.
Great bowlers, whether it's a sports shot or a house shot, you're still going to have great competition almost in every match. So it's awesome.
Do you as a bowler at a high level yourself like every once in a while being thrown a pretty good curveball of a really, really tough oil pattern like we saw last month?
Oh, I love bowling on tough patterns. It's a challenge, to yourself, and it's a challenge to everyone. It generally, puts more emphasis on spares, which is how I grew up. My dad, Arno, always taught me, make your spares, make your spares, make your spares. That's what I tell kids now. I'm like, make your spares. And, so it puts more emphasis on spares, which I love. But yeah,
Speaking of spares, that was going to be a tough one for Andy. So that's a second open frame in the match for Andy Moran. And just when he was starting to spin it back to his way a little bit, that happens and moves the advantage back over to Mike Johnson.
So you're always looking for the most room to miss a little bit, right? You're not going to have the world. You're always looking for the most room and still get the ball to roll through the pins the correct way, right? So right now, Andy's using a pearl ball. And earlier in the match when I said I thought he should have switched balls, I thought he should have switched to a solid ball, maybe a little dull finish, to kind of blend that dry out a little bit, so when the ball hits the dry, it doesn't freak out like we just saw.
Right. Exactly. That's kind of what we talked about in the beginning when we was talking about the shine versus the surface. So the pearlized balls are going to get through the front cleaner, which is going to retain the energy in the back end. So The duller balls will just read the lane a little bit sooner and smooth it out. So as you get more into the oil, you definitely want to smooth it out. You don't want to do anything erratic off the dry. So
as
that's kind of what we're talking about.
As a guy who drills a lot of bowling balls and gets asked for advice a lot, how have you kept up on all of the variables and changes in the bowling equipment industry?
Never stop learning. Whenever a ball manufacturer comes out with something new, you want to learn all about it. You know, you read all about it, you watch videos, you go to seminars, like, always learn.
Yep, because inevitably, every so often, the ball comes out that everybody has to have that just seems to be the magical ball. Right now, I think it's probably the phase 2, phase 3.
Yeah, the phase 3,
phase 3.
We're running out of phases after a while
Yeah.
for all these. Well, speaking of where we are now, Mike Johnson's been awesome. Four strikes, a spare, and then 3 in a row. And even though Andy's found himself a groove here, it's looking like it's a little too late.
I don't want him to hear me right now, but the ball that I wanted him to switch to, we just drilled here yesterday. It was his a conspiracy, the radical conspiracy. He throws that ball so amazing. It's got a dull finish, and it would have blended this out perfectly. And he didn't switch to it. And I love both of them, so I didn't want to give any advice.
Right. Well,
so
now
I kind of stayed out of it.
that he's pretty mathematically out of it, it would be interesting if he would take it out and see what it would have done.
All right, let's do it.
That's 3 in a row for Andy.
Andy, throw your conspiracy in the 10th. Just for fun. We're doing a scientific experiment here.
He's color commentating, he's equipment advising,
Well,
he's coaching.
we're actually,
Mike MALLWITZ does it all. Speaking of all, Mike Johnson's knocked them almost all down.
If you watch his ball, right? So he's pretty far outside. The ball hits the lane, reads the middle of the lane, and never really goes left. It just kind of reads and kind of waits, and just gradually gets to the pocket. Where the pearl ball that Andy's using goes dead straight, hits the dry, and goes left.
Goes left, right.
So you can see what an impressive performance this has been for Mike Johnson. Thought we might get that one to fall, but that was a great example of what you're talking about, Mike. Just a very subtle,
very
sort
smooth
of slide into the pocket.
Well, that's the thing that you don't want to happen to you, to make you second guess. Because now he's going to have to think about this shot.
Yeah, that was a terrible 10th frame shot, because next match he's going to be like, what do I do?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, we know that next match for Mike Johnson is going to come up on next week's show, because he is going to win here over Andy Moran and advance on to our next week's show. So the Grand Island effect is certainly obvious here. It's been 3 matches and 3 wins for the Grand Island Bowlers in Andy Moran and Mike Johnson. And Mike gets another strike to finish off a very impressive 258 performance. And that is going to get Mike Johnson the victory. We'll talk to Mike. We'll talk to Andy. Mike's going to give him a little advice and a little money as well, too. When we come back to wrap up week 1 at MALLWITZ'S Island Lanes on Grand Island, we are off to a rollicking start. We're back right after this. A big game of 258 gets Mike Johnson the victory over Andy Moran. Before we talk about this one, let's talk about the first 2. You were really in a nice groove. What was working so well?
I mean, it was the same as I usually see on a Monday night here. I mean, lined up, just rip it and grip it, you know?
Right. That's a good strategy. Now you come to this match, and right off the bat, you missed on the first frame, and you kind of had a look on your face.
You know what I ran into?
You
ran into a buzzsaw over there. Yeah, ran into it.
I was going to say, as soon as I said it, I'm like, I know what he ran into. He ran into Mike is what he ran into.
Right.
You knew coming into that match you were going to have to continue bowling that way, especially against
There's
him.
a little transition. I didn't catch it quite quick enough, but, I mean, Mike's a great bowler. If you're not on your A game, you don't have a chance.
Right. Okay, now tell him what he should have done.
Well, I don't know if we aired that 10th frame of yours, but you switched to your conspiracy, and you left a high flush 4, but I think you could have made that work.
Well, tell me before next time.
Well, but then Mike would have been mad at him.
Yeah,
Right.
no advice given before the match.
All right. Thanks for the commentary after.
Sue.
I know it's always fun here because you have that friendly competition of knowing each other, but kind of not seeing him change balls, did that affect your confidence level in this match?
Yeah, it didn't hurt me. I mean, it's always a little awkward bowling. You know, me and Andy are real good friends, so you know it's tough. But you know, the lanes were changing actually kind of fast on us there, and I picked up the right lane was a little sharper than the other, and got away with it early. Then and plus he kind of gave it to me, so it worked out.
Well, you got to make up for the fact you weren't here last month, because the last time we bowled here, because we really missed you. It's nice to see you back.
I appreciate that. It was a little bit of redemption today for sure. I hope to keep it rolling. Let's make it run.
All right, well, we'll see you next week.
Yeah.
All right, I'll be there.
And he doesn't have to hear about it from everybody here again. And guess what? We're going to see Mike on next week's show. We're going to see Andy back again on the 4th show, when these two guys will be teammates in our annual MALLWITZ'S All-Star Showdown. So we're going to have a lot of fun. Sue and I are going to come back, wrap up week 1, get you ready for week 2. We are just beginning here on Grand Island, MALLWITZ'S Island Lanes. More Beat the Champ right after this. I don't know if we're going to have room for it on the screen, but do we now call him Mike House Shoes Buzzsaw Johnson?
That's his new name, I guess, and you're right, we don't have room, but he's such a great bowler, and all the names aside, he's got this laissez-faire way about him that it seems to help him because he never gets excited. He's just very casual. But next week he's got some obstacles with left-handers. We haven't seen any left-handers bowl yet.
Yeah, Andy Reddick is going to be the first one up to try to knock Mike Johnson off that champion's crown. We're off to a good start here. The scores are high, the bowling is good, lots of strikes. Everything we love on Beat the Champ, everything you love writing up on that board.
Oh yeah, it's a huge change from last month at Rapids where the scores were, you know, a lot lower, but it is because it was such a tough condition. So, you know, it's anybody's game.
Yeah, we're in the calculus portion of the scoring here for Janelle. We're off to a great start. We always love coming here to Grand Island. It is always fun. So far, the bowling has been fun. We'll see if it continues. We'll see you next week on Beat the Champ.